My name is Sibley, and I am 30 years old. I had been with my boyfriend for 3 years when he said it, standing in our bedroom, applying cologne in the mirror like it was just another Tuesday. He didn't look at me when he spoke. That should have been the first clue. "Don't come with me tonight," he said casually, adjusting his cuff. "She gets weird when you're around." I watched him for a moment, really watched him. He wasn't asking. He was informing me, the way people do when they've already made a decision and just need compliance. "Who gets weird?" I asked, even though I already knew. He paused, met my eyes in the mirror, and said her name. The female coworker I'd been hearing about for months, the one who stayed late, the one whose name came up too often in stories that never quite included me. The room went quiet in that specific way it does when something finally clicks into place. I didn't yell. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I didn't beg for reassurance or demand explanations. I just nodded once and said, "All right." The relief on his face was immediate. He smiled, walked over, kissed my cheek like I'd just done him a favor, and told me he'd see me later. Then he left. The moment the door clicked shut, I didn't cry. I didn't sit down. I didn't spiral. I pulled out my phone and called the landlord. His name was Tom. We'd rented the apartment for 1.5 years, always paid on time, no complaints. "Tom," I said, keeping my voice even, "I need to talk to you about the lease." He hesitated. "Everything okay?" I told him my boyfriend and I were separating and that I wanted the lease transferred fully into my name. There was a pause, the kind where someone is doing mental math. "Can you sign tonight?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Send it as soon as you can." Next call was the locksmith. 24-hour service. I offered double if he could get there within the hour. He arrived in 18 minutes. While I waited, I started packing. Not my things. His, carefully, methodically. Clothes folded, shoes paired, toiletries boxed. I moved everything into the spare bedroom, stacked neatly against the wall. There was no rage in it, no shaking hands, just clarity. When the locksmith asked if I wanted the deadbolt changed too, I said yes without hesitation. He handed me 2 new keys and left. By the time the lease paperwork hit my inbox, the apartment already felt different, quieter, mine. He came home after midnight. I know because I heard his key scrape the lock once, twice, then pause. Then my phone started ringing. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Why isn't my key working?" he asked, voice high, confused, a little slurred. "Because it's not your apartment anymore," I said calmly. Silence, then disbelief, then anger. He told me I was insane, that I was overreacting, that it was just one comment. I said one thing before hanging up. "You wanted her comfortable, now she can be." Then I blocked his number. I slept better that night than I had in months. I woke up the next morning before my alarm, the kind of early, alert wake-up that usually comes with anxiety. But this time, there was no dread sitting on my chest. Just quiet. The apartment felt different, like it had exhaled. I made coffee, stood at the counter, and watched the steam curl upward while my phone stayed face down on the table. I already knew what was on it. 17 missed calls. Numbers I recognized and a few I didn't. Voicemails I deleted without listening. I knew the script. Shock first, then outrage, then bargaining. I didn't need to hear it in his voice to know it by heart. At 9 sharp, the finalized lease documents landed in my inbox. I signed, scanned my ID, sent them back, and saved a copy to my phone. The confirmation email followed a few minutes later. The apartment was legally mine. Completely. Irrevocably. I sat on the couch for a moment and let that settle. Not as a victory, but as a fact. There's a difference. There was a knock at the door around 10. I checked the peephole. Mia, his best friend. I opened the door before she knocked again. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "What the hell did you do?" she said, voice sharp, eyes already scanning the hallway like she expected him to appear behind her. I stepped aside to let her in. "I ended a relationship where I wasn't being respected," I said evenly. She scoffed. "He's sobbing in a hotel room right now. He has nowhere to go." I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. "He has plenty of places to go, just not here." She took a step closer, frustration flaring. "You changed the locks over one comment. That's psychotic." I raised a hand. "Stop. Let's be clear about what happened. He told me not to come to a work dinner because another woman's comfort mattered more than my presence. That wasn't one comment. That was a choice." Mia opened her mouth, then closed it. She glanced toward the spare bedroom. "His things," she said. "They're all packed. You can take them now, or I'll donate them by the end of the week." The calmness in my voice seemed to unnerve her more than anger would have. She followed me into the spare room and stared at the boxes stacked neatly against the wall. "You really did this," she said quietly. "I did." She took 2 boxes to her car, then came back twice more. We didn't speak while we loaded them. When the last box was gone, she paused at the door. "He's going to try to talk to you," she said. "I know," I replied. "Are you going to listen?" "No." She nodded once, like she understood more than she wanted to admit, and left. The messages escalated after that. Emails with empty subject lines. "Can we talk? This is childish. We need to talk like adults." I deleted them all. On day 3, he tried a different tactic. A new number. "I stayed at her place last night," the text read, as if that would sting me into responding. I stared at it for a full minute before typing back, "Good luck with that," and blocking the number. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks, but I heard about him. Marcus caught me at the gym one evening, the kind of friend who always knows things before you do. "You hear what happened at his work?" he asked between sets. "No," I said. "What happened?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "It blew up. The woman. She has a girlfriend. Had one the whole time." I didn't ask for details. He gave them anyway. The girlfriend showed up at the office, walked past reception, found them together at a desk, and started yelling in front of everyone. She called him a liar. She called the coworker a homewrecker. Coffee went flying. Security got involved. HR followed. Emails were pulled. Late-night messages. After-hours meetings. Client dinners that were just the 2 of them. He was moved to a different team. The coworker was strongly encouraged to take time off to reflect. I nodded. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "I'm fine." And I was. During that week off, he tried again. New number. I made a mistake. Silence from me. "Can we please talk?" Nothing. That night, "I miss you. I miss us." I blocked the number and set a filter to auto-delete anything from his email address. The following Saturday, the doorman called. "There's a Sibley here to see you," he said. I smiled at the slip and shook my head. "Tell him I'm not available." "He's insisting." "Tell him he's not on the approved visitor list and he needs to leave." I watched from my window as he stood outside for 20 minutes, phone in hand, looking up at the building, like the right words might unlock a door that didn't belong to him anymore. Then he left. 3 months later, Mia filled in the rest over coffee. He'd quit his job after the tension became unbearable. Moved in with a friend, then back with his parents. Tried dating. Every time someone asked what happened with his last relationship, he gave a version that ended with, "She overreacted." The coworker disappeared from his life the moment it became inconvenient. The comfort he'd prioritized evaporated without ceremony. I repainted the spare bedroom and turned it into an office. Bought a proper desk, a chair that didn't hurt my back. Started working from home 2 days a week. 4 months after he moved out, I got a promotion. I ran again, joined a book club, reconnected with friends I'd let fade. 6 months later, I met someone new. His name was Noah. We met at a friend's party. He was funny, direct, and didn't play games. On our 3rd date, he invited me to a team dinner. I hesitated. "You sure?" I asked. "I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable." He looked at me like I'd said something absurd. "Why would you make anyone uncomfortable? You're my girlfriend. I want you there." It was such a simple sentence. It meant everything. That night, I knew I hadn't changed the locks out of anger. I'd changed them because I finally stopped underreacting. The funny thing about stepping away is how fast the story keeps moving without you in it. I didn't have to ask questions. I didn't have to investigate. The truth came to me anyway, like it had been waiting for the space to surface. 2 weeks after the lock change, I ran into Marcus at the gym again. We were between sets, the kind of idle pause where people say more than they plan to. He looked at me, then away, then back. "You hear the rest of it?" he asked. I shook my head. "There's more?" He let out a breath. "Yeah, it got worse." Apparently the night my ex stayed at the coworker's place wasn't comfort or clarity or some romantic turning point like he'd imagined. It was a couch, a blanket, and a lecture about boundaries. The woman he'd centered his work life around wasn't free the way he thought she was. She had a girlfriend, had had one the entire time. And when that girlfriend found out about the late nights, the constant texts, the dinners that weren't really dinners, she showed up at the office. She didn't make an appointment. She didn't wait at reception. She walked straight through, found them together, and let loose in front of everyone. Accusations, names, coffee thrown, security called, HR notified, emails pulled, message logs reviewed, after-hours meetings documented, Patterns made visible. The coworker was told to take a week off to reflect. My ex was moved to another team. That's corporate language for we can't fire you yet, but we're done protecting you. I nodded while Marcus talked, feeling nothing like triumph, just confirmation. You okay? He asked. I'm fine, I said. And I was. The messages kept coming for a while. New numbers, new emails, new angles. I made a mistake. We should talk. I miss you. Each one felt less about me and more about his panic. I blocked them all, set filters, closed doors without ceremony. When he showed up at my building one Saturday and tried to talk his way past the doorman, I told him to turn him away. I watched from my window as he stood there, staring up like regret might be loud enough to reach me. It wasn't. Mia told me later he'd quit his job, said the atmosphere became unbearable. Clients asked questions. His manager stopped assigning him to major projects. He sent an email and never went back. Moved in with a friend, then back with his parents. Tried dating. Every time someone asked about his last relationship, he told a version that ended with, "She overreacted." The story never changed because understanding would have required accountability. I didn't keep tabs. I didn't need updates to feel resolved. My resolution came from what my life looked like without him. I repainted the spare bedroom and turned it into an office, bought a desk that didn't wobble, a chair that supported my back. I started working from home twice a week. 4 months after he moved out, I got a promotion. I ran again, joined a book club, reconnected with friends I'd slowly faded from while trying to make something unstable feel secure. 6 months after the lock change, I met Noah at a friend's party. He was warm, direct, and didn't perform interest like a favor. On our third date, he invited me to a team dinner. I hesitated, old reflexes kicking in. You sure? I asked. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. He laughed, genuinely confused. Why would you make anyone uncomfortable? You're my girlfriend. I want you there. It was such a simple sentence. It landed like a truth I hadn't realized I was starving for. That night, sitting beside him at a table where no one asked me to disappear, I understood something clearly. The night my ex told me not to come wasn't about logistics or awkwardness. It was about a pattern I'd been excusing for too long. I didn't change the locks because I was angry. I changed them because I finally stopped underreacting. For a long time, I thought closure would feel louder. I imagined some final conversation where everything got laid out, where he finally understood, where I got to say the perfect sentence that made it all make sense. What actually happened was quieter, and somehow that was better. After the messages stopped, after the numbers were blocked and the emails filtered into nothing, the apartment became a mirror. Every corner reflected who I was, without constantly adjusting myself to fit someone else's comfort. I rearranged furniture, not dramatically, just enough that the space felt intentional. I threw out the mugs he always used but never washed. I replaced the shower curtain he'd complained about. Small things, but they added up. People around me started noticing the shift before I did. A coworker commented that I seemed lighter. My manager pulled me aside one afternoon and said my focus had been sharp lately, asked if I'd be interested in leading a new project. Friends I hadn't seen in months started inviting me out again. And I said yes without checking my phone first to see if it would inconvenience someone else. Every now and then, information drifted back to me. Not because I was asking, but because when something collapses publicly, it echoes. He'd tried to explain his side to mutual friends. The phrase, "she overreacted," kept showing up, like a shield he could hide behind. But when people asked what he'd actually done to fix things, the story ended there. No growth, no ownership, just repetition. One night, I ran into his coworker's girlfriend at a bar, completely unplanned. I recognized her immediately from the description Marcus had given me. She didn't recognize me at first. We stood at the counter, waiting for drinks, the kind of accidental proximity that feels charged only because you know the backstory. Then she turned, looked at me, and froze. "Oh," she said slowly, "you're Sibley." I nodded. She didn't get defensive. She didn't apologize on anyone's behalf. She just sighed and said, "I'm really sorry. I wish I'd known sooner." I believed her. We talked for 10 minutes about nothing important. Then she paid for my drink and left. No drama, no confrontation, just acknowledgement. It felt like a strange but fitting punctuation mark. With Noah, things unfolded differently than anything I'd experienced before. There was no guessing, no positioning, no triangulating around someone else's feelings. When he invited me into his world, it wasn't conditional. When something felt off, we talked about it before it turned into silence. One evening, as we were cooking dinner, I told him the story. Not all the details, just the moment. The mirror, the sentence. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "I'm glad you believed her when she showed you who she was." That was it. No advice, no analysis, just validation. A year after the locks were changed, I sold the desk I'd bought for the spare bedroom. Noah and I were moving in together. A new place, bigger windows, more light, no room that felt like it was waiting for someone to leave. I heard about my ex one last time through Mia. He'd moved to a different city, taken a job at a smaller firm, still told people the same story, still believed comfort and priority were negotiable, still thought the relationship ended over one comment. I never corrected him, because the truth didn't need my help anymore. The last time I heard his name, it didn't come with a sting. That surprised me more than anything else. Mia mentioned it casually over coffee, like she was talking about the weather. He'd moved again. Another city, another job, smaller firm this time, fewer perks. She said he still told the same story, that I'd overreacted, that I'd changed the locks over one comment. That line followed him like a script he couldn't rewrite, because rewriting it would mean admitting something about himself he wasn't ready to face. I didn't interrupt her. I didn't correct her. I didn't feel the need to defend myself anymore. The truth had already done its work. With Noah, life felt steady in a way I'd never experienced. Not exciting in bursts, not dramatic, just solid. When he invited me somewhere, it was because he wanted me there. When he talked about work, he didn't filter parts of it out to make space for someone else's comfort. When something bothered him, he said it. When something bothered me, I didn't have to rehearse it first. One night, months after we moved in together, we were sitting on the floor surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. I found the old keys in the bottom of a drawer, the ones that no longer opened anything. I held them up and laughed quietly. "These used to feel so heavy," I said. Noah looked at them, then at me. "What do they feel like now?" I thought about it for a moment. "Nothing," I said, and I meant it. I realized then that the lock change had never been about punishment. It wasn't about winning or proving a point. It was about recognizing the moment someone chose another person's comfort over my presence and deciding I wouldn't negotiate my worth after that. Some people hear a boundary and see it as cruelty. Others hear it and adjust. The difference tells you everything. Every once in a while, I think about that night, the mirror, the cologne, the sentence delivered like a fact. "Don't come tonight." I think about how easily I said, "all right," and how quickly that word turned into action instead of acceptance. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't wait for closure to be handed to me. I created it. Some doors don't need to be slammed to be closed. Some keys don't break. They just stop working when the person holding them loses the right to come back in. I don't regret changing the locks. I don't regret blocking the numbers. I don't regret walking away without one last conversation. Because the right people never ask you to disappear so someone else can feel comfortable. And the wrong ones will always call it an overreaction when you finally stop underreacting. The strangest part wasn't losing him. It was realizing how much space he'd been quietly taking up without ever filling it. After the move, after the boxes were unpacked and the last spare key was dropped into a junk drawer I never opened again, life didn't suddenly become perfect. It became honest. Mornings were quieter, evenings stretched longer. I stopped checking my phone out of habit, stopped bracing myself for texts that would subtly ask me to make myself smaller. That constant background hum of anticipation disappeared, and with it, a kind of exhaustion I hadn't known how to name. Work shifted first, not because anything external changed, but because I did. I spoke up in meetings without softening my opinions. I stopped volunteering to absorb tasks no one else wanted, just to keep things smooth. When my manager asked me to lead a project that would have terrified me a year earlier, I said yes, without asking who else might feel uncomfortable about it. The project went well, really well. It wasn't a miracle. It was what happens when you stop splitting your energy between showing up and staying out of the way. With Noah, there were no mirrors where I had to watch myself disappear. There were disagreements, sure, but they were about real things. Timing, preferences, boundaries. Not about whether my presence was inconvenient. When he invited me into his world, it wasn't conditional. When he talked about his coworkers, there was no shadow story running underneath. I didn't have to read between lines because there weren't any hidden ones. One night, we hosted friends for dinner. Nothing fancy. Pasta, cheap wine, music playing too quietly. I caught myself laughing without checking the room first, without measuring whether I was taking up too much space. Halfway through the night, someone asked how we met, and Noah told the story easily, proudly. She moved into her own place after realizing she deserved better, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My chest tightened, not with pain, but with recognition. That was the story now, not the drama, not the lock change, the choice. Every so often, a ghost tried the door, a message relayed through someone else, a hope she's doing well. A casual mention dropped into conversation. I didn't respond, not out of bitterness, but because there was nothing left to say. Closure had already happened in action. Words would have been redundant. I kept the lesson, though. I watched for moments where I might start underreacting again, when someone framed disrespect as a joke, when I felt the urge to explain myself into acceptance. Those moments didn't disappear, but I recognized them faster. I trusted that instinct now, the one that told me when something wasn't right long before I could articulate why. The locks changing wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of living without negotiating my worth. It taught me that you don't owe access to people who ask you to disappear, that peace isn't loud, and self-respect rarely needs an audience, and that when someone calls your boundary an overreaction, it usually means they benefited from you having none. I don't think about the door much anymore. I think about the life on this side of it, the mornings that start without dread, the nights that end without second-guessing, the simple, steady knowing that I belong wherever I'm invited honestly. Some endings don't need an apology to be complete. They just need you to stop unlocking the door